In a stunning and audacious act of asymmetric warfare, Ukraine has dramatically escalated the conflict by successfully striking deep inside Russian territory, targeting two of the nation's most valuable strategic assets: its largest natural gas processing facility and a critical long-range bomber airfield. Using waves of newly developed long-range attack drones, Ukrainian forces executed a complex, coordinated overnight operation that sent shockwave through the Kremlin and Royal Global Energy Market. While Kyiv has celebrated the strikes as a legitimate and necessary response to Russia's relentless aggression, the attacks represent a high-stake gamble. This bold move risks severe Russian retaliation and has created deep divisions among Ukraine's Western partners, particularly within the Trump administration, which views the escalation as a dangerous obstacle to its goal of ending the war. The primary target of the attack was the sprawling Urengoy gas processing plant in the Yamalo-Nenets regions of Siberia, one of the largest facilities of its kind in the world. This plant is a critical node in Russia's energy infrastructure, processing natural gas from the massive Urengoy field before it is shipped to markets via pipelines. Shortly before dawn, multiple Ukrainian drones, having traveled undetected over 2,000 kilometers across Russian airspace, slammed into key components of the facility. Satellite imagery and local social media videos confirm huge fires erupting from gas processing units and storage tanks. The resulting inferno was so large it was reportedly visible from space, sending a towering column of black smoke into the Siberian sky. Russian emergency service scrambled to contain the blaze, but initial reports from Russian state media, while downplaying the extent of the damage, acknowledged a temporary suspension of operation due to a fire incident caused by an attempted drone attack. The economic and psychological impact of this single strike is immense. The Urengoy facility is a crown jewel of Gazprom, the Russian state energy plant, and a vital source of revenue for the Kremlin's war chest. Any significant disruption to its operation directly impacts Russia's ability to fund its military. The attack immediately sent global natural gas prices soaring on the European Tidal Transfer Facilities, or TTF, benchmark. Prices surged by over 20% in a matter of hours as traders panic about the security of Russia's remaining energy export. The strike demonstrates a previously unknown Ukrainian capability to hit targets deep within Russia's industrial heartland, shattering the sense of security far from the front lines and proving that no part of Russia's strategic infrastructure is truly safe. Hours after the attack on the gas plant, a second wave of Ukrainian drones struck the Angels 2 airbase near the city of Saratov in southern Russia. This airfield is one of Russia's most important strategic military sites, serving as the primary base for its fleet of Tu-95 Bear and Tu-160 Blackjack long-range strategic bombers. These are the very aircraft that have been used throughout the war to launch cruise missiles at Ukrainian cities and critical infrastructure. Ukrainian intelligence sources claim their drones targeted aircraft on the tarmac, as well as fuel depot and maintenance facilities. While Russia's Ministry of Defense claimed that all drones were intercepted by air defense, geolocated footage and analysis by independent military observers show multiple explosions at the base, consistent with successful hits. The full extent of the damage is still being assessed, but the attack represents a significant blow to Russia's strategic bombing capability and a major propaganda victory for Ukraine. In Kyiv, the mood was one of grim satisfaction. Ukrainian officials, speaking on condition of anonymity, framed the attacks not as an escalation but a leveling of the playing field. They argued that for years, Russia has systematically targeted Ukraine's civilian infrastructure with impunity. These strikes, they contend, are simply giving Russia a taste of its own medicine. The official Ukrainian position is that these Russian facilities are legitimate military targets. The gas plant, they argue, directly funds the war machine, while the bomber's base is the launching point for attacks that have killed thousands of Ukrainian civilians. This move is part of a new strategy born of desperation and innovation. Facing a catastrophic shortage of manpower and conventional artillery. As seen in the battle for Pokrovsk, Ukraine is shifting its focus to asymmetric tactics, using its ingenuity to develop long-range drones that can inflict painful and costly damage deep inside enemy territory. It is a message to Moscow that even as Ukraine loses ground, it can still impose an unbearable cost for the war. The reaction from Moscow was one of extreme fury. The Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, immediately labeled the attack as an act of state-sponsored terrorism, enabled and encouraged by the West. He warned that Russia's response would be firm and decisive, and that the Kyiv regime will be made to regret its action. Russian state television went into overdrive, with commentators calling for massive retaliatory strikes against Ukrainian government buildings, leadership headquarters, and any remaining infrastructure. The attack have put immense pressure on the Russian military to demonstrate that it can protect the homeland, and analysts widely expect a new and devastating wave of missile and drone strikes across Ukraine in the coming days. The international repercussions have been immediate and profound, nowhere more so than in Washington. The Ukrainian strikes have thrown a wrench into the core of President Donald Trump's foreign policy agenda. The president was reportedly enraged by the news, viewing the attack as a reckless and ungrateful act of defiance by Kyiv. He sees the escalation as a deliberate attempt by Ukraine to sabotage his effort to broker a peace deal and to potentially drag the United States and NATO deeper into the conflict. In a terse statement, the White House press office declared that the United States does not support or encourage strikes inside Russian territory and urged all parties to de-escalate the conflict and work toward a peaceful negotiated settlement. President Trump personally believes this action vindicates his skeptical approach, proving that open-ended support for Ukraine only leads to a more dangerous and uncontrollable war. This presidential displeasure has cascaded through the administration. At the State Department, Secretary of State Marco Rubio found himself in an exceedingly difficult diplomatic position. He was forced to publicly admonish Ukraine for targeting civilian energy infrastructure, a move that could be viewed as a war crime. He stressed the importance of adhering to the laws of armed conflict. However, he also had to avoid completely condemning an ally fighting for its survival. In his communications with European and Ukrainian counterparts, Secretary Rubio has been using the incident as powerful leverage, arguing that this dangerous new phase of the war proved that the conflict is spiraling out of control and that a ceasefire is more urgent than ever. He is pressing the Ukrainian government to understand that such action will severely erode political support in the United States, particularly among Republicans in Congress. The Pentagon, under Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth, immediately launched an investigation to determine if any American-made components or intelligence were used in the planning or execution of the drone strikes. Any evidence of the U.S. involvement, even indirect, will create a massive political scandal for the administration. Secretary Hegseth, while perhaps privately impressed by the tactical success of the operation, is publicly focused on the risk of Russian retaliation. He has warned the National Security Council that Russia is likely to respond asymmetrically, potentially targeting Western commercial satellites or undersea data cables, actions that could have a direct impact on American security and economic interests. He sees the strikes as a perfect example of how the Ukraine war generates unpredictable risk that distract from America's core strategic priorities. The economic consequences of the attack fell squarely on the desk of the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, and the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. Secretary Lutnick's department is analyzing the impact of the energy price spike on American and global trade, warning that sustained high natural gas price could reignite inflation and slow economic growth. Secretary Benson is concerned about the volatility in financial markets and the potential for the conflict to create a wider economic crisis. This event complicates his ongoing efforts to pressure China, as it adds another layer of global instability that the administration must manage. The intelligence community is working to provide a clear picture of the aftermath. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is tasked with providing President Trump with an objective assessment of the actual damage to the Russian facilities, cutting through the propaganda from both Kyiv and Moscow. A strategic assessment reportedly warned that while the strike were tactically successful for Ukraine, they are likely to be a strategic failure. Our analysis suggests that the attack will not meaningfully halt Russia's war effort, but will guarantee a brutal Russian response against Ukrainian civilians. Furthermore, it will harden the Kremlin's resolve and strengthen its narrative at home that Russia is fighting a defensive war against a terrorist state backed by Nato. Director Gabbard has argued that this act of desperation from Kyiv confirms the French military's assessment that Ukraine cannot win and that a negotiated end is the only way to prevent the complete destruction of the country. For all the global actors, the strike has been a clarifying moment. The French government sees the attack as a tragic, final lashing out from a military on the brink of collapse, further validating its internal assessment that defeat is inevitable. For China, the attack on Russia's energy infrastructure is deeply concerning, as it threatened the stability of a key energy supplier and introduced a new level of chaos into a conflict that is already straining the global economy. It adds weight to the American ultimatum, as Washington can now point to the attack as evidence of the global instability Beijing is funding through its support for Moscow. Ultimately, Ukraine's daring strike have changed the character of the war. They have proven that Ukraine remains a capable and defiant actor, able to inflict pain far beyond its border. However, this defiance has come at a great cost. The attack have likely sealed off any remaining goodwill within the Trump administration, triggered a coming storm of Russian vengeance, and rattled a global economy already on edge. By striking deep into the heart of Russia, Ukraine has shown that it will not go quietly into the night, but in doing so, it may have inadvertently hastened the very outcome it sought to prevent, pushing its allies further away and inviting a level of destruction that its battered nation can no longer withstand. Many of my listeners, like 70%, have subscribed to my YouTube channel. And so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to So Can Rich, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, you're first ones on me. But if you have watched this show before, it's like you are a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now. And we will continue to build this show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.